It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. I recently had someone ask me about doing a maturity assessment for their group. What they were trying to figure out is they had a whole bunch of teams, and it was a large organization, and they were just trying to determine which teams were which teams were executing at the greatest level of agility. Some teams understood Agile and were doing fine and making their way through. Other teams were almost in a struggle mode and really needed some assist. And it was one of those times where the organization felt like the changes that they made based on a previous coach were to instill some of the best team members onto some of the lesser performing teams to give them something to aspire to be. Now, what's most interesting about that to me is that's probably the exact opposite approach of what I would have done. Now, let me explain. One of the things that Mike Cohn and I both agree upon, I heard him speak about this recently, is that if you're trying to get Agile to be successful in your organization, sometimes it's helpful to create one team with superpowers. And what I mean by that is you create one team that has most of this down to a science. You create one team that's doing really, really well, that they get it, they know exactly what they need to do, and they're rocking and rolling. Then you build other teams around that team based on that team's performance and guidance to help the remaining teams be successful. I feel too many organizations try to, how shall I put this, create super teams by dispersing their star players instead of by taking a team that's doing really well and letting that team be an example and model for the other teams and what their success might look like. So, about this assessment. So, the company asked me to come in and do an assessment. And this, of course, was after a previous company, a different coaching organization, went in and tried to steer or guide this organization, but ran into great resistance. They ran into things not working. And every piece of advice that this organization gave them, this other coaching organization, was pretty good advice. It wasn't wrong, it was just not applied correctly. So I guess the message here, the question rather, is how do we measure agile maturity? And the topic is, do we measure agile maturity? And if so, how? And I think that it's important for us to understand that even if you have a coach, a training organization, a whole group of people, a slew of people, and they're all coming in and giving you advice about how you should operate and what you should do, right? It doesn't mean that they're teaching you the correct way to apply. Because it's one thing to say, hey, here's some things you need to do, here's some changes. And then if you apply it, but it's applied incorrectly or applied inconsistently or applied where one team is struggling and many other teams are just lackluster, you need to figure out the right application of the principles. It's kind of like exercise. You can go in and you can exercise all you want. I mean, I know people who do hours of cardio and they still walk away feeling like I don't feel good. And they try to increase the amount of cardio and they try to do other things. But the key that's missing is they didn't insert resistance training. Then when they insert resistance training along with the cardio, they discover that, hey, wait a minute, my lean body mass is increasing, but my weight is also increasing. So it's one of those things where the principle of inspect and adapt is so incredibly important, especially if you're trying to measure maturity routines. One other thing that I thought was really interesting was this organization told me that the company that came in was introducing a whole lot of brand new, cutting edge, innovative concepts to help them be successful. And while at first glance, the shiny keys and the squirrel moments are exciting and you get to branch out and do other things, one thing you'll quickly discover is that the foundations, the basics, the 12 principles that were written to support Agile are probably more critical to get right than any of those other things. Now, what's interesting is this was the catalyst for me creating something called the Agile 12-step guide or 12-step program. Now, my degree is in psychology, so I can do that. But it's one of those things where I wanted people to have a point of reference. I wanted people to have something they could go back to and say, "Oh, that makes sense, right? That makes total sense." And I didn't want it to be one of these doctrinal, I wanted it to be something where people could go, they could explore, they could learn more about what they should be doing, they could challenge and ask questions. And it wasn't meant to be prescriptive. It wasn't meant to be all or nothing. It wasn't meant to be if you do these things, you're agile, and if you don't, you're not, although that is true. And it doesn't even need to be done in order. You can do it in any order you'd like. But that 12-step program really has lent a lot of credibility and credence to the organization's ability to grow and to do things right. And it starts very simple. Does the company understand why they're on this agile journey? What problem were you trying to solve? What were you trying to make better? And why was agile the answer? Who came up with the answer agile and why? The second one is, do you have a clear vision and strategy, starting at the top with a North Star for the organization and making sure you're moving in the right direction? Or do you have a clear vision and strategy for the product or service that you sell? What is, the value that the customer finds that you provide that can't easily be duplicated? How are you different from all of your competitors, and what are you doing to make a difference? Um, and I know that sounds crazy, or maybe it doesn't sound crazy, but sometimes you have to think about the impact that your product or service has on the world. And will you be forever remembered for creating or for, distributing that product or service? And I find that organizations often struggle because they're not sure how to package it, or they're not sure how to put together their service or product in an agile way. So I guess what I'm trying to say is this. If you want to measure your agile maturity, I'm going to give you two different tools that you can use. One, go straight to the Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles that support the manifesto. Review each of the 12 principles first and give yourself a check mark if it's something you feel like you're doing well, a hyphen or a dash if you feel like it's something you're doing but you need to improve on, or an X if it's something you're not doing at all that you need to explore. In addition, I encourage you to download the AgileDad 12-step program. Now, the 12-step program is almost like when you buy a new product at the store and it comes with a quick start guide. It's almost like a quick start guide. It's going to give you the tools that you need to really see where you are. And with either of these, you can use the check mark, hyphen, and X system, or you can give yourself a numeric rating between 0 and 10 in each category and create a mind map that shows exactly what areas you need to improve on. Either way, it's not all or nothing. Agile's a journey. It's filled with sprints, but the total, mass of the race is a marathon. So from time to time, it's necessary for you to sprint. Well, you should be sprinting all the time, but not, yeah, you get where I'm going. I don't want to make people weary from constantly sprinting. There's going to be ebb and flow in your velocity. There's going to be ebb and flow in the work that's being done, and that's okay. I think the goal is to understand how we're going to grow together, to make sure we understand what the end goal is, what our reality is, what opportunities we have, and what we intend to do, and make sure we have a clear path drawn how to get there. That's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at agiledad.com. We would love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.